ready, team? Off you go then. 15 minutes.
Hello, and thank you for attending today's conference here in Paris. The critical issue we will be tackling is France's issues with inequality and social spending, and ways to rectify these problems. I would like to introduce myself as Jacques Thibon, the Defender of Rights, or Défenseur des droits of France. The Defender of Rights is a government-authorized program formed in 2011, and I've been chosen by French President François Hollande to represent him in combating the growing discrimination of immigrants and other groups, advocating anti-discriminatory actions, enforcing ethnic security, and ultimately to work to create greater equality for all. I am pleased to introduce our panel, all experts on an aspect of our problem, and our goal by the end of the conference is to try to create a solution that will alleviate the inequality issue in France. French economist and professor at both the Paris and London School of Economics, Mr. Thomas Piketty, will help us understand the impact this inequality has on economic growth and development in France. Here to discuss the urgent issue that France has been struggling with, the continued discrimination of our people, I am pleased to introduce the following experts. Mr. Michel Sapin, the French Minister of Finance. Ms. Renée Dubois, an advocate for specific skilled business owners. And Ms. Asma Bougnaoui, an advocate for Muslim rights. I'm honored to hold a conference with such distinguished members. Let's start with the overall economic state of the Euro area so that we can solve this inequality issue as efficiently as possible. Mr. Piketty?
Of course. To evaluate the economic situation in the Euro area, we must first discuss the three main indicators of an economy's well-being: GDP, gross domestic product, inflation, and unemployment. Let's begin with GDP. The Eurozone as a whole has experienced a GDP growth rate of 1.7% as of the beginning of 2017. Within the past 3 years, it has stagnated. However, forecasts predict it will slowly but surely improve. With the highest GDP is Ireland, with 7.2%, due to low taxes, which cause a lot of more investments, as well as Malta with 5.1% and Luxembourg with 3.6% due to stronger foreign trade and an increase in exports. However, Greece has fallen behind as the only country in the EU with a negative growth rate of negative 1.1%. Italy and other countries like Italy have experienced low growth. Now let's take a look at inflation. As of January 2017, the EU has reached a relatively healthy 1.5% inflation rate, but it is still below the standard 2% set by the ECB. The highest inflation rate is Latvia with 3.4% and Belgium with 3.1%, and this is due to the increase in prices of housing and utilities, alcohol and tobacco, as well as clothing and footwear. The lowest inflation rates include Ireland with 0.7% and Finland with 0.8%. And this is mainly due to the decrease in low prices of oil, clothing and footwear, alcohol and tobacco, and housing and utilities. Now let's take a look at unemployment. As of January 2017, the unemployment rate of the EU has greatly improved to 9.5%, which is the lowest figure the Eurozone has seen since 2009. The lowest unemployment rate is in Germany with 3.9% due to retail and trade industries hiring more workers, as well as in Malta with 4.2% due to policies encouraging youth employment. Greece, however, has the highest unemployment rate of 23.5%, and this is due to high national debt and tax evasion. Similar trends are shown in Spain with an unemployment rate of 18.63% due to construction and rigid labor laws. Overall, the economies of the Eurozone are expected to improve.
Now, let's move on to more domestic issues within France. I'll start with GDP. Currently, France has a GDP of 2.3 trillion euros and has an annual growth rate of about 1.1%, with an average growth in 2016, 1.1%. This Growth is mainly due to increase in product demand and increase in exports from 0.8% up to 1.3%. Now, let's move on to inflation. So the inflation rate in France has greatly increased from 0.6% up to 1.1%, mainly due to increases in energy and service prices. Now, moving on to unemployment within France. Unemployment within France has decreased down to 10%, after many years of relatively high unemployment to the rest of the Eurozone.
As we get a fuller picture of the current status of the Eurozone, we need to tie this to our own concerns here in France, this being the continued discrimination of our people, a direct violation of the ideals of liberty and equality for all. Today I invited a representative to discuss the issues faced by ethnic minorities. Ms. Asma Bougnaoui, can you discuss some of the issues you have seen in your community?
Thank you, Mr. Tabone. It's a pleasure to be speaking at this conference today. I have spent my whole life experiencing discrimination directly and indirectly. In communities like Marseille, with the unemployment rate of 13%, there's a lack of employment among ethnic minorities due to their inability to gain access to technical training and attend college. According to a report published in 2014, 82% of 15-year-old native-born citizens met basic education requirements, while only 58% of French immigrants met the requirements. Many feel lost and stuck, never to feel the same way as their white counterparts. Oftentimes, this is a direct line to poverty. There's also the additional factor of racism. I've seen my people being turned down because of the color of their skin or their beliefs. As women, we are denied the right of expression, such as wearing hijab. I myself was fired from the workplace for wearing a hijab. Minority groups are feeling the effects of inequality, and we must consider their cases to improve their economic well-being. 30.4% of immigrants live in poverty, while only 12.5% of Native individuals live in poverty. In a chart published by the International Monetary Fund, French natives have an unemployment rate of 10%, while people born outside of the European Union have an unemployment rate of approximately 20%. If immigrants are unemployed, their children would not be educated either, leading to almost half of the people in poverty being under the age of 30, dooming them to an unemployed life.
It's truly unfortunate that there has been little to no enforcement of anti-discriminatory policies for ethnic minorities. However, that is the objective of our conference. Ms. Bougnaoui, do you have any recommendations to alleviate this problem?
We must not only discuss the education and job aspects, but also the issue of discrimination outside of the workplace. The first step to do so is to acknowledge Article 27 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. This article addresses that countries will allow full equality for people's culture, language, and religion. France tries to deal with discrimination by acting as if it is non-existent. Not recognizing this article means that France does not recognize its real problem of discrimination. So while withdrawing this reservation does not guarantee the full elimination of discrimination, it is the first step to do so to alleviate the inequality in France. Many communities cannot afford to pay for their children's education, which is an average of 150 euros to 900 euros per term. Our children are being held back from their potential to learn due to our unemployed status. Thus, their future is dim, and they will have a hard time finding a job without a diploma. Without a diploma ourselves, we cannot educate our children with a specific set of skills. Thus, they become useless to the labor force and add to the alarmingly increasing number of young people who are unemployed or living in poverty. Essentially, we are untapped potential that needs to be acknowledged to improve France's economy. We need to provide better education for our children.
Ms. Bougnaoui, opportunity in France is already low. By adding potential employees, we're adding competitiveness to a already highly competitive pool. If your children are educated, then ours will have to compete with yours in the future and with a higher chance of being unemployed too. Not only are you stealing our jobs, but you're also taking away our children's education and attaining and maintaining a job. The Muslim population and other ethnic minority populations threaten our jobs and threaten our stability in our lives as French citizens.
Ms. Dubois, you must see this issue from a few steps back. Imagine a pie where each slice of the pie represents a job and economy. The problem in our economy is that this pie is not shared equally among our people. Some people, the majority, are more employed than others, as shown by the chart on the left. This is evident in the high unemployment rates of ethnic minorities. This problem can be solved and alleviated if we increase the size of the pie. By doing so, we can generate more jobs so that everyone can receive an equally larger piece of pie. However, if we aren't utilizing everyone in our economy and we don't have a skilled workforce, then the pie cannot grow bigger. Our solution, expanding the labor market, allows for this growth as it allows for us to reach our maximum potential for creating jobs. Therefore, there will be less competition due to the increase in jobs. This will be discussed further in our solution. Firstly, we must provide quality public education to members of the minority in order to raise their levels of competency. Our main objective will be to build more public schools, especially in poor communities dominated by immigrants and minorities. In the graph, the large white spaces represent where there are a lack of schools. The regions we plan to target include Grand Est, Bourgogne, Normandy, Corse, and Nouvelle-Aquitaine. By taking these actions, we ensure that they have better access to quality education so that they can become more competent for jobs, especially higher level ones. Many of them have an untapped potential, and their involvement in France's economic opportunities will help overall the economy and as well as businesses owned by Ms. Dubois. By growing the workforce and providing vocational training, they can replace less competent workers and serve the economy better.
So, in the short term, our plan of building more schools will free up jobs opportunities for teachers and construction workers to build these schools and fill these schools, and these jobs can be filled by minority workers. Moreover, we plan to provide $1,000 tax benefits for apprenticeships for minority members, and all of this will increase participation within the economy, stimulating economic growth. In the long term, as these ethnic minority groups become more educated and more skilled, they can fill in jobs that are currently unfilled and help promote economic growth. And as they become more and more skilled, they can start their own businesses, further growing the economy. We plan to fund this project by drawing on the corporate income tax. Currently, the corporate income tax within France is 33%, and a current 2017 Act plans to decrease this corporate income tax down to 28% by 2020. We plan to raise the corporate income tax by 1% up back to 29%, and this 1% will be used to fund our progressive project.
Mr. Sapin, your solution seems sufficient enough on the outside, but the problem is that we as taxpayers do not want to work so hard just so that our money can be used toward foreign workers. As a taxpayer and a business owner, why would I, who represents the majority of France, want to pay for a project that wouldn't benefit us?
Well, think of these taxes as a type of investment. As you invest this tax into building minority schools, the outcome will be a minority population that's more skilled, larger, and healthier. And later on, you will be able to draw from this larger workforce, which is healthier and more skilled. So what you will be doing is that you will be integrating more skilled workers into your business while increasing the participation of minority groups. So everyone benefits and the economy is stimulated.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, we would first acknowledge discrimination in French law and take away any laws that violate that. We would create a project called the Progressive Project, which will increase education across France by building public schools. In order to fund this program, we would increase the corporate income tax by 1%, which will fund this program.
That is correct.
Very well. I can see how this plan will work, and I'm willing to work with you for the betterment of France.
I agree, and I have a hopeful prospect for greater equality in France.
Thank you all for your valuable input. This conference is adjourned.
Okay, so I'm going to start with two general questions. The first one is, the outlook for the global economy has turned more positive recently. How and why might this benefit the rate of GDP growth in the euro area?
sorry, could you repeat the question, please?
The outlook for the global economy has turned more positive recently. In the global economy, world economy, global economic activity has turned positive. How might this benefit GDP growth in the euro area?
Well, as worldwide economic activity is stimulated, euro area activities can also be stimulated as more workers are becoming stimulated in other areas such as America. These workers will help stimulate economic growth, which affects the EU in many ways. First off, we can have workers moving to the EU where unemployment is currently very high, and as more job opportunities in the EU open up, the unemployment rate can go down as economic activities in other parts of the world are stimulated. And this helps stimulate GDP growth as more people have more jobs to spend more money, and this causes economic growth to be stimulated.
And more specifically for France, as we mentioned, France's GDP has increased mostly due to trade and exports. So with the global economy improving, this will more specifically improve France's economy as a whole too.
Additionally, if the global economy is becoming better, then more people will be encouraged to spend more, which will increase inflation up to that 2% that the ECB is setting for, and it will overall increase the GDP.
Okay, the second question is about inflation. The inflation rate in the euro area has increased steadily in the past year. How and why has the monetary policy of the European Central Bank influenced the inflation rate?
So currently, the euro area the ECB has a monetary policy of maintaining low interest rates, firstly, and low interest rates help prospective spenders to be encouraged to take out more loans as the price of taking out these loans is low. And as more money is spent, the inflation rate naturally goes up. And the second way the monetary policy influences the inflation rate is the ECB currently has spending programs where they invest in securities and bonds. And this is meant to finance credit institutions such as banks. And this encourages these banks to give out more loans. And as we stated earlier, as loans are given out more, people tend to spend more to stimulate economic activity and inflation. And more specifically, this can help benefit our solution, as encouraging banks to give out more loans helps students, prospective minority students, to take out student loans to fill these schools and become more skilled workers.
Hi, your presentation focused mostly on inequality between the native-born and immigrants and ethnic minorities. What are your thoughts on other kinds of economic inequality in France, like the distance between high-income and low-income workers? And to what extent do you think that programs to alleviate that kind of inequality would also help to alleviate the kind of inequality that you're discussing today?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I didn't hear it.
Sure. Your presentation discussed inequality between native-born French and ethnic minorities and immigrants. What do you think about other kinds of inequality in France, like income inequality and wealth inequality? And do you think that tackling those kinds of inequality would also help to alleviate the kind of inequality that you're discussing here today?
Well, France actually has a large base of social welfare programs that are aimed to target a lot of this inequality, and specifically with a lot of the inequalities, as you mentioned, such as the high income inequality, the social tensions that exist prevent really focusing on economic growth if a lot of business owners are more focused on specifically maybe the people they are hiring or this the social ideas. So therefore, with the social friction becoming more prevalent, you can't focus on improving the economy. So overall, if you do improve the other inequalities, this will lead to a greater focus on economic well-being.
Additionally, there is a gender inequality problem in France, and a lot of immigrants coming in are single, young, not married. And so a lot of the women cannot depend on their husbands for their income. So they have a lot of, they feel the unemployment rates. And so by helping alleviate those problems in gender inequality will help the inequality of immigrants as well.
And then also another issue of inequality is an aging population in France having jobs, and how the older generations currently have more jobs than the younger population, as the younger population does not have enough jobs in order to fulfill. And there's a high unemployment among the young generation, and with our solution with ethnic minority, as Thomas said earlier about how majority of immigrants are young, and because a lot of the unemployment is based around young people, our solution will educate these minorities, and since majority of them are younger generations, it would also help the inequality among the young and the old.
And adding on to our solution, the progressive project that we have created will increase the workforce by adding on these ethnic minorities and making them educated. And therefore, we can do the same with the inequality between high income and low income and try to add on to that workforce. And therefore, we can achieve high GDP and also achieve inflation that is a close to ideal 2% that the ECB recommends.
Going back to the issue that you brought up earlier between wealth inequality, yes, certainly tackling wealth inequality can certainly help stimulate economic growth in France and to alleviate the problems we discussed earlier. Certainly if the wealthy are taking all the jobs and the poor cannot pay for becoming more skilled or getting more jobs, then certainly you're not taking advantage of the full resources that you have available. So certainly if we alleviate the wealth inequality between the rich and the poor, then we give more opportunities to the poor to participate in the economy, which can benefit all by stimulating the economy and growing it larger.
Okay, so if the problem of education is a serious one of immigrant communities, I'm a little bit unclear as to the cause of it. France is a country which spends a lot per capita on education. It's also a country that provides universal access for free for education, at least up to the university level. So why is the problem that immigrants don't have access or can't afford education in France? Could you give me more
well, a main issue is that it's also the racial aspect where children who are in schools tend to have a harder time in school. Therefore, their education might not be as high quality as other children in that school. And there are actually specific zones in France that we mentioned in our presentation where it has a high concentration of immigrants, but at the same time also a low concentration of schools. So with those combined factors, a lot of immigrants and ethnic minorities don't have the quality education as other people in specific areas in France, such as metropolitan France.
Building off of that, it's not just that the minority populations don't have access to it, which is certainly a problem, but another aspect of it is that they don't have the money to pursue a higher quality education, such as college or university, and that certainly is part of the cause of this problem.
Half of the immigrant population in poverty are under the age of 30, and because of that, you can see how a lot of immigrant youths do not have the access to this education, and then later on when they have children, their children cannot have access to this either.
Just a follow-up question. The 5 regions that you circled in your presentation are rather rural areas. Do you think that is the main area where immigrants are concentrated in France? And do you have, is this evidenced out by data? Do you have data by ethnic origin to back this evidence?
Well, the capital of one of the regions that we have circled is Marseille, and a third of their population is Muslim immigrants. And so they do not have, because it's around a rural area around Marseille, they do not have the access to the public education.
In addition, if you're recently the first round of French elections just concluded, And the regions, like in the northeast, I believe, on our map that we circled, mainly voted for Marine Le Pen, mostly because of immigration difficulties that they were suffering from there. So if our plan to integrate these minorities into the economy succeeds, then we can help educate these people and integrate them more into the economy to help benefit the majority of France.
Thank you very much. Time's up.
Thank you.
Thank you.